Hello, friend. Welcome to the Happy Family Club. We're delighted to have you join us. Our mission is to help you have a happier, stronger family. We do that by bringing you the world's greatest experts in family, marriage, parenting, and relationships. We interview them to discover their secrets, their strategies, their techniques, and bring them to you so that you can cherry pick exactly what you need right now to have more success and more joy in your family.
And if you enjoyed this interview, we encourage you to share it with your friends and your family and come on to the happyfamilyclub.com and see if you can find more information that's going to help you and your family be happier.
Again, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the interview. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Happy Family Club podcast. We're so excited to have Kirk Martin here on our show today. And I'm actually going to let Margie do a little introduction if I can.
Great.
Because you're so much better at that.
I don't know. Thanks for joining us, though, Kirk. We're really happy you're here.
And super excited.
So glad you're here. Kirk has done some really great work helping children, especially strong-willed children, right? And children that don't really listen or have meltdowns or don't respond to the consequences that are given. And Kirk and actually his son Casey has helped over 1 million parents in all these 19 different countries, I guess, with a lot of real practical life-changing strategies and how to actually work with these types of children. And he's actually specialized in ADHD, haven't you, Kirk?
Yes.
From what I've seen, yeah. So we're excited to have you share some of this to help us and all of our listeners to improve our parenting with these types of children.
Actually, Margie, before we started, Margie said, finally, I can find somebody that can help you, honey. So, so I'm going to take extra notes and really, we're going to be good at this. So what I love, Kirk, is your focus on helping parents understand the relationship they had and how God sees us as children and helping us to have a heart in the same way God does. It's beautiful, that connection that you make, because that's the only surefire connection. So anyway, we're excited to dive in with you. So thank you again for being here.
No, thank you guys. I love what you're doing and super happy to be part of it.
Yeah, great. Wonderful. So as you know, we love asking this question about, what's one major thing that parents can do to create more joy and happiness in their family. And again, we're always quick to say, we're not looking for, quick thrills and frills. We're looking for real deep lasting joy and happiness. And when we saw your stuff, we thought, oh, that's the guy to talk to about this, because you have so many great insights. So what would actually, before we get there, can you tell us a little bit about your background? I mean, how does a guy get to where you're at right now? It's such an unusual thing. All the children you've mentored and the families you've worked with, it's so unique in the world today. So how did you get here?
It was, I will blame my son. Our son, he was the strong little kid that came out of the womb with boxing gloves on. And my dad was career military. So feared intimidation, my way or the highway. And so I kind of inherited that from my dad. And when you try that with a strong-willed child, they tend to fight back even harder.
Yeah.
What I eventually learned was I was the one who needed to change, right? And you're going to ask me the one thing that we talk about, and it's this realization that the only person in life that I can truly control is myself. And the quickest way to change your child's behavior, and we'll go through this, is to first control yourself. And so I spent 9 years, I was like, I would plead with God, like, you need to change this kid. Why did you give us this kid? Why doesn't he behave? Why does he melt down? Why doesn't he care about consequences? And I started hearing, that kind of still small little voice saying, asking me 3 questions. The first was, what if I created your son like this on purpose?
Wow.
And what if you, by trying to change him, are frustrating my purposes for your son? And then the third question was, what if instead of trying to change your son, you're the one who needs to change? And I'm a guy, so I blocked that one out for a long time. But when I finally got a hold of that, I noticed I had so much influence over Casey, not by forcing him, but just by modeling it. And then you go back to Jesus of discipling discipline. It means to teach and teach by modeling. And so I'll try to make the long story short, which is after we had some success with Casey, we noticed there's so many kids that are strong-willed, kids on the spectrum, who just get labeled rebellious, bad, defiant kids. But usually they're just really bright, frustrated kids. So rather than bring them into a therapeutic office, we opened up our home. And the idea was we'd have 10 or 15 kids come into our home. There were Legos on the floor, so they all wanted to play with Legos. And in the course of everyday life with them, we would teach them how to control their emotions, their impulses, work on social skills. And it kind of just blossomed from there. We didn't expect this to happen. It was just a passion of ours to help kind of the outcast kids. And then it just kind of grew from there.
So how this is so fascinating to me because it's like unheard of. It's beautiful. But so how long typically would you keep children in the home? Would they stay overnight for a week, or would they just come for a couple days in a row, or like what? I'm just curious. What did that look like?
It depended. During the school year, they would come over. We'd have them over for dinner. Because dinner's a very grounding time. And as you know, there are a lot of kids in dysfunctional homes, single families. So we wanted to have kids sit around the table with us. Have big discussions. On the weekends, I'd come home. At the time, I was working a regular full-time job. So we'd have kids over on, all day Saturday. In the summer, it was week long and sometimes overnight, depending on kind of the kids. And it was weird after a while. We had kids from Norway flying in, parents flying their kids in from all over the country to come to this because we weren't trying to fix the kids. We weren't saying there's something wrong with you. We were saying you just need some tools. Strong-willed, you've got a lot of emotions, you're an intense kid. That's going to serve you well in life. We're going to give you some tools so when things don't go your way, you can handle it. And so, we had no idea. I put a $6 ad in a local newspaper that said ADHD camps build confidence and social skills. And my wife was like, nobody's going to come to your camp. And then we got all these calls and I was like, I have to develop a curriculum.
You're like, oh, I better do something about this.
There are 6 kids coming over on Saturday. What are we going to do? But I think that's, in a way, it's the best thing because then you're relying on God's wisdom rather than this well thought out plan. And it was like, God, in 3 days, there are a bunch of kids coming to our house. What do we do? And it was so beautiful because it was kind of organically done in that way. So, but I did that a long time ago. I'm way too old to have like 15 kids running around. I have no idea how you guys you are artificial intelligence generated humans.
This is all just AI generated, so it's fine. Airbrushed on the internet, as I say. So funny.
That's amazing. So was Casey in with the group? Was it all about his same age?
Casey, I will forever be grateful. He had weird kids show up at his house, run up to the bedroom to wake him up because they all liked him, right? He was usually like the older kid. See, are you coming down to play? And he's like, I'm trying to sleep. Leave me alone. So he grew up around all of that. And because it was so much of our story, Casey, my story with him of our changed relationship, he was around for all of it. So he kind of learned firsthand what it was like. And then honestly, the kids changed me. As you know, the kids changed me more than I changed them because they knew every button to push that I had. And I couldn't like sit there and yell at them or murder children coming to my right. So it was like,
especially if they paid to come and get, beaten. It's just bad. This is bad publicity.
So I ended up changing so much and it's really gratifying. This has been, some of the kids 15, 20 years ago. I still get emails. Hey, remember my child was in your camp. They were struggling. Now they're out in the real world. They're happy. They're married. They've got kids. Like, it's really cool to see.
So amazing. So I'm curious. And then I want to get to the one thing question. You've already kind of dabbled in it, but I want to dig deeper. But so in those camps, how much interaction did you have with the parents?
Well, that's what ended up changing, Joshua, because what I noticed was I could get the kids to do anything. I was like really good with the strong-willed kids.
Yeah.
But when they went home, their parents were super reactive.
Right.
So we switched and said, if your kids are coming to our house, you have to come and participate, because otherwise you're sending kids here, but if you're not changing it at home,
yeah.
And it actually changed full course. And I said, you know what, I'm not going to work with the kids anymore.
Right.
And let's just work with the parents. Because as you know, the parents are with the kids 24 hours a day.
Exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't matter what I do for an hour.
Yeah.
And that's when it actually really took off, because then you've got parents doing this with all of their kids at home. And then that starts to spread.
So powerful. When I was in high school, one of my ways I paid my way through high school was as a swim teacher. Right. So I taught little kids swim lessons. And what's amazing is if the parents weren't there, I could get those kids to do anything. It was awesome. They like learned how to swim, and they just like, it was great. They listened to me. And then the parents showed up and they knew all the buttons to push with the parents. And then it was all, so I set a rule. It's like, okay, 2 rules if your kid's going to come to learn to swim with me. 1 is you can't be there during lessons. 2 is I'm going to sit down with you. I was 16, 17, 18, but I got this about parents. Like, I'm going to sit down with you and I'm going to give you instructions on what to do with your kid after we're done with lessons, because you're going to mess it all up when we're all done. The kid's going to drown. It's going to be my fault. So I have lessons for the parents and lessons for the kids. So.
That is awesome. That is so true. It's so true. It's all that parental anxiety, and I want them to do well, and I'm going to lecture, and then the child like clams up or is like, that's so cool.
So true. So I love that you switch gears. I mean, I think it's amazing. And just on a side note, the question of, you have to change, and God made this child for a purpose. Here's what I'm seeing God had this amazing plan to influence 1 million families by putting, a handful of strong-willed kids in your life to discipline you to change so you could teach these parents so that they could help their families. It's an amazing thing the way God works. It's awesome.
We didn't see it at the time.
Yeah.
But even on a more granular level, like my son was a gift to me.
Yeah.
Because if we had like an easy, compliant kid who just did what we said all the time, I could have just been immature, right? I could have just said, hey, go do this. Right. But it caused, it's the same thing with marriage, right? You either grow up or you grow apart.
Yeah.
Right. Like if there's not going to be, but if there's a 36-year-old guy watching this who doesn't have kids, he plays video games on Saturday morning.
Right.
But when you get married, and now it's like, oh, like, because marriage is the union of like 2 irritating, selfish people.
Right.
So how are we going to navigate that? And then you recreate other irritating, selfish people.
Right.
And now your home's filled with, you've got 4 of you, with each of you with different agendas. And so it causes you to grow up. And for me, that's the transformation, right? It's the same thing of our union with Christ is, in the end, it's not really about our behavior. It's that relationship transforms us. We become different people. Yeah. And so if you can lean into that as a parent, and instead of, why do these kids do this? It's like, well, their job description, right? The job description of a toddler is to make messes, explore, and just get in trouble. Like, that's their job description.
Right.
And then your job description is to not freak out when they do that. So anyway, it's
a safe place to do it. Super cool. So talk with us a little bit more about this transformation, because you said, well, and maybe you want to restate it or tell us again, but like, having this idea that we can change ourselves and we can't fix everybody else. Talk to us a little bit about that. And then what does that journey look like? I mean, you've taught a lot of parents this, so give us some ideas about what that journey looks like and some practical steps we can take.
So I'll give you a couple. I think first is just recognizing that truth. There's only one person in life that I can truly control. It's my own emotions, my behavior, my words, and just absorbing that for a couple of days, right? Of like, It's like as a parent, especially as a young parent, it's, well, I've got to be on this kid. I've got to train him. I've got to teach him. I've got to correct him all the time. And instead, when you start to step back and say, okay, I'm going to change myself. So here are a couple things I started with: changing body posture. So my body posture used to be walk into the room, stand up, puff out the chest. You're going to do this, young man. Well, it just provoked a defensive response.
Right.
A really weird one that's really effective when things are escalating in the home, whether it's a 5-year-old or a 12-year-old. For anybody who's listening, just try it. It'll sound kind of dumb, but do it. Just sit. Literally sit in a chair. Let's say two siblings are squabbling in the living room.
Yeah.
Natural impulse. You know what? I buy you guys all these toys, all these video games. You can't even play well for 20 minutes. You go to your room. You go to your room.
Right.
Now, what did I do? I just got them to be quiet, which was kind of my goal, but I didn't teach them anything. If I were to walk into that living room and say, lie down in the middle of the living room floor, here's what would happen. The two kids are going to look at you like, what are you doing?
Right.
It's so bizarre.
Yeah.
Like, Mom, we've never actually seen you sit.
Right.
Because moms don't sit. And you're laying on the floor and they will stop and they'll look at you like, what are you doing? And now you get to teach. Hey, guys, and I'm going to use you two as an example. I'll use you, Joshua, as the strong-willed, irritating child.
You nailed it. Perfect. Thank you.
My sister. But now I can speak and say, guys, I've seen this situation in our home develop like 68 times. Joshua, I know what you're doing. You've got this amazing brain. It needs to be stimulated. You have all these ideas and you've got a lot of energy. But when you get bored, you hate being bored because your brain shuts down. So you pick on your sister. But when you pick on your sister, you get in trouble, you lose all your stuff, and you're now dependent on your sister. You need her to react to you in order to feed your brain. That's not going to work for you, but I've got an idea. Because if you want to come with me to the kitchen and help me fix lunch, I bet we could brainstorm 3 different ways for you to use that brain of yours to make some money in the neighborhood, because you are a born entrepreneur. And so in that case, instead of saying, stop it, I just taught him, this is why you're poking your sister to get the reaction, but it's not going to work for you because you're just going to get in trouble. But here's an alternative, because I love how your brain works. You want to start a little business because you can either spend your whole childhood irritating your sister and losing all your things, or we start a little business, my friend, and you could do really well.
Totally.
And I started that not by changing their behavior. And then I can talk to the sister who keeps reacting and say, stop reacting to your brother because you're giving him power over you. Right. And every daughter is going to be like, he doesn't have power over me. And I'm like, yeah, he does, because he looked at you and you reacted.
Freaked out. Yeah.
And I only noticed that because when he rolls his eyes at me, I react.
Right.
This 7-year-old is controlling the whole home.
Yeah.
But I change. Can I do one more example?
Yes, please.
Yeah, these are great.
Say when Casey was about 11 or 12, he started coming into the room with some attitude, with that tone.
Yeah.
And you have every right to say, young man, you are not going to talk to me like that. You are not going to use that in this home. And the strong-willed child, or at least ours, said, just did, right? Like he went right after it.
Right after it. Yeah, right.
And so then you say, you know what? If you're going to be disrespectful, you know what? You're not going to your friend's house tonight. All your video games lost. We're done. And then it begins to escalate, right? Yeah. Because as soon as you jump into that, you escalate. So what I did one day was I actually stepped backwards and I said, and we're big into using even matter-of-fact tone. Yeah. I can control my tone because I don't like you keep that up. Because as soon as you start getting upset, your child knows that. And they're like, look, all I need to do is do that a couple more times, and then dad's going to lose it. And as soon as dad starts stomping around the house, well, dad's out of control and the kid's in control. And when a parent does too sweet, you've heard this in our generation now, or the younger generation, they're being way too sweet with the kids. Well, honey, you shouldn't talk to mommy like that. And the child doesn't respect that. It sounds way too weak.
Yeah.
Right. So right in between so I stepped back and I said, hey, Case, listen. So now I go into teacher mode. The last 43 times I heard you use that tone, it was because you were anxious, frustrated, or hungry, because those were his 3 triggers.
Yeah.
2 options now. You may continue to talk to me like that if you want, because he can.
Sure.
You can duct tape them, but then they'll do other things to you.
Right.
So you may, but you're just going to lose all your stuff. Right.
Yeah.
My no doesn't have a lot of energy. It's just like the assumed look, it's not going to work. Not a lot of energy, no drama. I can't believe when I was a kid, I didn't talk to none of that. It's just not going to work. But if you want to grab some chips, I'll grab some salsa. I'll meet you out on the deck. I'll help you with whatever you're struggling with.
Yeah.
So the idea is, one of our phrases is motion changes emotion. He comes into the room all emotional, full of himself.
Yeah.
Instead of me feeding that, I step back and say, hey, that's not going to work. Something else is going on. I'm here to problem solve with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's what God does, right? When we go before God and we're like, God, I don't know what to do. He doesn't say, you know what? If you would have more faith, you would, right? He doesn't guilt us.
Right.
Right. Hey, I can tell you're messed up right now. You're not thinking clearly. Let's go for a walk and talk. And I'll give you some clarity and I'll problem solve with you. So that gave us, and there's a million different ways of, I had this great dad, his daughter really liked to draw. And whenever she was getting amped up, he would come in the room, and this is so beautiful. He'd say, hey, honey, I'm kind of in the mood to draw. So I'm going to grab some pencils and paper and go downstairs. When you're ready, if you grab a water for me and come downstairs and join me.
Mm-hmm.
Just invited her. So rather than go to your room until you can learn to talk respectfully to your parent, because now we get into, when I'm upset, I send you away from me.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And you know how that works with faith stuff. Kids start to, oh, God's mad. He sends me away.
Yeah.
And this dad, instead of coming in the room, you're not going to talk to your mother like that. He knew something else was going on and he led her. So, hey, I'm going to go do something I know you like. When you're ready. Great phrase when kids are upset. Because I'm sure out of your 83 children, you have a few strong-willed kids. And if you say, you're going to stop that right now, that gets an instant no.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
That's like tipping a nuclear bomb. It's like, let's just detonate the nuclear bomb. It's like, oh.
So when I say when you're ready, see, I'm giving my daughter ownership. And I said, hey, I'm going to be in the basement drawing. And then could you grab me a water? Yeah. I just gave her something she's in control of.
Yeah.
And I guarantee you, in most situations, a minute or two later, that daughter's going to walk downstairs. Yeah. And now, while they're coloring, there's no eye contact. It's not having a deep family meeting about your behavior, young lady, because that creates defensiveness.
Right.
We're both drawing. Casey and I are having chips and salsa. I'm building with Legos. Now I can say, hey, I know that you know what you just said to your mom was wrong. I know you know that's wrong.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about, and I love that phrase, I'm curious.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious what was going on that would lead you to be yelling at your mom or to talk to what's going on. Now I can get to the root and find out, oh, they're frustrated, disappointed, something happened with a friend. Now I can teach them the most important lesson in some ways, which is, how are you going to deal with frustration and disappointment in life? It's going to happen thousands of times in your life. When I send them to the room, all I tell them is, it's wrong to do what you are doing, but they already know it's wrong.
Yeah.
What they need is, let me show you how to handle that differently next time.
Yeah.
And we're together. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
it does make sense. And
beautiful.
I love a couple of things about this, Kirk. One is that you're in that teaching mode, but you're also in the invitation mode, because if they don't voluntarily step into a situation or a new set of behavior or thinking or whatever, then you're not going to force it onto them. Again, you can't change them. Like you said, you can change you. And you're just inviting them to take action to move forward in a different direction. I love that approach. The other thing that I love is that you've said it a couple of times, but like the brother is dependent on the sister for the reaction, right? And so if you take the sister out, they all grow up. They've learned the dependency. They grow up. So now, in order for him to get what he thinks he wants out of life, he's got to find something to hit to get a reaction out of. And so, is this drugs? Is this robbery? Is this cheating in business? Is this like where can he hit something metaphorically to get a response,
or irritate his wife,
or irritate his wife, or whatever?
Yeah,
like,
looking into the future.
He's hard coded. No, I would never do that.
No, you would never.
So like
that irritate his wife.
The sister's gone.
I just know that's the first thing you thought. It was good. So I love that you're, instead of engendering in them this response of, oh, to get what I want in life, I've got to hit something, poke something, prod something, get a reaction out of something. I actually can work through this and do something constructive, like build a business, or like serve somebody else, or like pray to God and get direction, or like, whatever it is, the resolution there needs to be. Very powerful.
So powerful.
Do you mind if I share something along those lines?
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
Okay. So you get a lot of kids on the spectrum have brains that are physiologically understimulated. They don't get enough dopamine, not enough blood flow. So they're always looking for, in your words, that hit, right? That kind of dopamine hit. Well, one of the easiest ways to do it is just to irritate my parents, right? I think how easy. My mom tells me to do something. I roll my eyes. Mom responds with, young lady, you will not roll your eyes at me. I never did that to my mother. Then dad hears mom and daughter getting upset. Dad gets a little bit afraid because men, we don't know what to do with other people's emotions, right? So we're like, we really know what to do with you, honey, when everything's okay. But when you're upset, freaks us out. So dad comes in and starts yelling at the daughter. And then that's usually when mom starts sticking up for the daughter. And a little kid learned by moving two eye muscles, I control the behavior of the two adults in the home.
Yeah.
So what they're after is intensity. And I'll hit on this because I'm sure you have a lot of people watching who have adopted kids from the foster care system. So this is really important for these kind of kids, not just those kids, but ADD kids, all those kids. They want intensity. And so human nature says you get your needs met usually the easiest way possible. So if all I have to do is poke my sister, roll my eyes at my dad, and I get intensity, well, I'm just going to keep doing that.
Right.
So I want to start shifting to give kids positive intensity proactively. Let me give you an example in a situation. So this is very common with our kids. You get like a, say, 9-year-old boy comes home from school. He makes a paper airplane. He throws the paper airplane. It doesn't fly the way he wants. So he's going to go grab it, crumpled. I'm sure you have one of these kids crumpled. Stupid airplane. This is the dumbest airplane. I'm dumb. And every good mom and dad come in the room. Oh, honey, that was a really good airplane, right? And the child's like, duh. If it were a good airplane, it would have flown right.
Exactly.
We just did to our kids what husbands usually do to their wives, which is, I'm uncomfortable with your emotions. It's okay, honey. You're just overreacting, right? Which is what every dumb husband has said to his wife. Because what we should say is, honey, I'm really immature. I don't know how to handle your emotions. And so I try to dismiss them and act like they don't exist. So instead, if I were to come into that situation with that child who just threw his airplane, I'd come in and say, you know what? If I were you, I'd be frustrated too. You spent a lot of time trying to make that airplane. You had a vision of how it was supposed to be, and it didn't fly right. That's frustrating. Now, I'll stop there for a second. That validation is really calming because there's nothing worse. Has anybody ever told you, you know what? You just need to calm down. Right. That is irritating. So when I validate, and I love this phrase, of course you're frustrated right now. Right? When your teenagers come and they want to get Snapchat, right? And you're a good, responsible parent, you're like, no. And they get upset and do their little tantrums. My response, of course you're upset at me. All your friends have it and you want it. Your job as a teenager is to try to get everything you possibly can that your friends have. My job as a parent is to prevent you from making decisions in the moment that will ruin the rest of your life. Right. So there, right. And so you take a little bit of that tension out of it, of like, oh, it's like, no, this is the way it's supposed to work. Your job, toddler, is to get into stuff.
Yeah.
It's to be curious. A 4-year-old is not supposed to be like, okay, what's the list today? A 4-year-old is not supposed to be productive and efficient. And so, right, we have the rest of our lives. But sometimes as young parents, we're like, well, I need to teach them from a young, yes, teach them, but chill. Like, they're supposed to make messes.
Yeah.
And so when you normalize a little bit of it, it takes the pressure off of you. Like, I can't believe that my teenager is talking. Like, no, it would be weird if your teenager said, Mom, Dad, you know what? I think we have too much stuff. I think you give us too much time. It's not good for us to have all this time. Please take it away. Like,
Yeah.
that would be weird. You'd be like, you guys are up to something.
You're right.
So when I came in and said, hey, I'd be frustrated too.
Yeah.
Now you normalized it. Now space. Hey, you know what? I need to go to the bathroom. I'm going to go get something to drink. When I come back, let's problem solve and figure out how to fix this.
Yeah.
Giving strong-willed or upset kids space in the moment, really important, because nobody likes to be watched when they're melting down.
Right.
Right? It's like, you know what? You're going to change that. I'm going to stand here until you change your mood. Well, now everybody's watching at me. But when I stepped away for a minute, it gave them space to wrestle with, oh, this airplane, and it's frustrating. Why did I do that? When you come back, your tone is fresh. Your eyes are fresh. And you're much more likely to lead them and for them to follow you. You know, I do an example, a quick one. Mom and daughter in a horse barn. Because the daughter likes to ride horses because she's not great with people, but they're often awesome with animals.
Yes.
And so she's trying to put her riding boots on, but the kids we work with are really particular about little things. And this day, the boots aren't fitting right. So the daughter's throwing her boots down, stupid boots. And every mom's going to say, if you're not going to treat your boots with respect, you're never going to ride a horse again. Right. And then it escalates.
Yeah.
So, and we all do that. So moms and dads, no blame and guilt. We all do those things.
Right.
But what if mom just faked and said, oh, honey, listen, I'm getting a call. Stepped out of that barn for a minute.
Yeah.
Gave her daughter a minute to wrestle with those boots alone without being watched. It's your swim example.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Let the kids fail without the parents there watching and commenting. Honey, do the backstroke a little bit better. You need to keep your head up, put your head down, hold your nose, and then like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
So the space, the intensity of validation, and if I can make one more point, why this is important with like adopted kids, is they miss that connection, a lot of them, when they were babies.
Oh yeah.
So what happens is they associate intensity with connection, but they don't distinguish between negative and positive.
Right.
So
it's just intensity. They just want the intensity. Yeah.
So if they can just do something wrong and dad comes in, you know what? You're not going to do that. That fed that kid, because here's what he knows. At least someone's yelling at me. That means they care.
Yeah.
So, right. So I want to switch that around. And every time they do make a good choice, I'm coming, oh, Joshua, good choice, my friend. Fist bump. And then walk away. Not a lot of time on it, but just a good, you know what? That was a good choice. I heard your sister provoking you. You walked away.
Yeah.
Dude, that tells me you're growing up. Well done.
Yeah.
Then that starts to feed their brain of, oh, that's the intensity that I want from my parents. It's a really cool thing that you can do.
Amazing. One of the things I just want to highlight here, and I think you've done it very intentionally. If not, like, bravo, it's just this amazing process. But your normalization or calling out truth the way things really are in these situations, you know, it's like sitting down. You gave a couple examples of, hey, you know, the last 37 times that you've done this, you were hungry or stressed or whatever. And you're just acknowledging that, you're identifying it. And I think that process is really cool, because so many times there's a lot of shame and guilt and frustration. And it's like, It's like, oh, if I admit that my kid's frustrated over a silly little airplane, I must be a bad parent and they must have something wrong with them. And just being like, oh, well, yeah, actually, I'd be frustrated too because, the paper airplane didn't work and you spent time on it. It's like, oh, and I think about the scripture where Christ says, it's like the truth will set you free. And really what you're doing is you're identifying things as they really are, not fake society, not false expectations, but just, hey, this is where it really is. And all of a sudden it frees up everybody to be like, oh, yeah, okay.
That's good.
It's so powerful with what you're doing there, Kirk. It really is amazing.
I think it's important, and I appreciate you calling that out, especially for a lot of Christian and faith-based parents, right? Because we're like, well, if we just pray enough, everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
But look what God's kid, like I always bring back like the first two kids, Cain and Abel. One of the two kids was a murderer. So if you're having better than a 50% murder rate among your kids, historically speaking, you're a good mom, right? And it's like, and then there's Joseph and his brothers.
Right.
And I think sometimes in faith circles, we create this thing of like, oh yeah, well, no, it's not supposed to be perfect, right? And there's, it's not that you're doing anything wrong. This is just human nature since the beginning of time. And I love, especially the kids we work with grow up with a lot of shame.
Yeah.
And the reason kids often lie, and this freaks Christian parents out more than our child doesn't have integrity. I was like, it's not an integrity issue. You have an emotional, strong-willed, impulsive child who did something wrong, and he knows it was wrong. He's lying because he doesn't want the consequence, because he's ashamed of always being in trouble. So the lying is just what a smart kid does, knowing that right? Like it's not right. But
but totally understand.
The lying isn't the issue. It's the impulse control in the first place. And now he's just covering, which is, again, the first human, Adam, who ate from that tree. That woman that you gave me, blame God. It was, if you read that, it is awesome because he doesn't just blame the woman. He blames God, the woman that you gave me. So God and Eve under the bus.
Right. Totally.
And that's the first human before, everything bad happened. It's so I like taking the shame out and saying, of course you're upset. Why would you not, like with anxiety? Of course you're anxious. You're going to a new place. You don't know anybody there. You don't know what to expect. If your stomach isn't a little bit anxious, something's probably wrong with you. And then that takes it out of like, well, I don't want to go because I'm anxious. No, of course you're anxious. I got anxious before I got on this podcast. I don't know what you're going to ask me, right? Like I'm 57. I get anxious. It helps everybody breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you calling that out. It's really good.
Yeah. Well, it's such a powerful thing. And the other thing that stood out to me as we visited is that, and I mentioned it before, but that invitation process and giving them the option to buy into making some changes and identifying that, oh, they actually have ownership of themselves. And just like the key thing you can do is to transform yourself. Key thing they can do is to turn to God and transform themselves. They don't get control over you. And I think that's what you're saying. Like the child learning that they roll their eyes can spark the intensity from the two parents. They're learning like, oh, I actually can control other people. And it's not a great signal to send.
No.
Right. And like you said, it's like, and then sometimes those people roll into being parents themselves and they think, oh, I controlled mom and dad, I can control my kid. And then, wow, sparks start flying because then it gets rough.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So powerful. So I think we've got time. If you've got one more like cool tip or trick or insight for us and with some examples, I think that we've got time for one more piece of wisdom from you, Kirk.
Let me do one for younger people. This isn't anything deep, but it's it just hit me. So hopefully it helps someone. When you're young, when you guys, and you're still young parents, but when you were first parents, like your first kids, it's like you get so it's a lot of no, stop, put that down. It's instead of always saying no, whenever you say no to something inappropriate, I always like to say yes to something appropriate.
Oh,
right?
wow.
So say my 7-year-old is jumping on the sofa, right? You have every right as a parent to walk in and say, get off the sofa. There's springs on the sofa. Or we do the sweet mommy one, honey, we don't jump on the sofa. There are springs. And the child's like, maybe we don't, but I am.
I do.
So, and by the way, this is really key for today's parents. You don't have to, you can't explain things to them or convince. Stop. Your kids are never going to say, Mom, Dad, I really wanted to do it my own way, but after you lectured me, you guys have so much wisdom. I just want to do it your like. Convincing. I lead. So when I walk in the room, it's short and sweet. Hey, jumping on a sofa, not happening in my home. But I love your energy. If you want to come help me stir the soup, if you want to come help me walk the dog, man, I could really use your help. Yeah. So the no is quick and easy. There's not a long drama. We don't have to talk about the sofa. It's not happening in my home.
Yeah.
And then the transition, I lead a lot with my voice. Hey, but that energy, man, I love that. Now, do I really like their energy? No, because they're exhausted. Right? But I want to use that. Here's no to the sofa, but here are 3. Hey, there's some mulch in the backyard. Man, if you want to shovel some mulch, I have a lot of kids who love doing physical work.
Oh, yeah.
And I can see you guys have property out there. I'm surprised there's not like a kid running back there doing one of your 40 kids.
There normally would be, to be honest with you. So
it would be awesome if they ran right now.
We have the podcast flag up, so they're like, okay, we're gonna.
Can't do it right now.
Yeah, they've walked through many of the videos. So
if I'm ever on again, I want to plant a kid in the back yard.
Easy.
Doing physical work is actually really good for a lot of these kids. It's a sensory thing. So anyway, I've talked too much, but I appreciate it. Really good questions, and I appreciate you calling out like the right stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I wish you could go on for another couple hours. This is great. We have really learned a lot. And I think our listeners also are really going to appreciate what you've shared with us.
Yeah, super cool.
I'm replaying things in my mind that I want to go and do with my kids now.
Yeah. And again, that process of, my old Anthony Robbins, he talks a lot about pattern interrupts, and it's like, hey, that's not happening. And if you want to come and stir stuff, we can talk about how to solve this. It's just like we're laying down in the middle of the floor. It's doing things in a way that it's not escalating the situation, but it's being the parent still. It's guiding and leading and loving and helping them. But I think, starting off with this whole thing, you talked about how we have to make the changes, right? We're not doing these things to compel them to change, but we get to change ourselves. And one other thing I just wanted to point out that it struck out to me so powerful when you're talking about Adam and Eve. It's fascinating to me that as Christians, oftentimes we have this pressure to have perfect families, right? It's like, oh, I'm a believer, and if I was a great person, then my kids would be great, and then just be excellent in everything and perfect.
Make me look good.
And all that, good stuff. But the fascinating thing about it is that the very fact that God knew every single one of his kids would jump on the couch, poke their sister, come in with attitude to mom and dad, like the very fact of that is why the whole plan exists and why Christ came and did what he did, right? It's like he gets it. Like, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to be a wreck. You're going to be selfish. You're going to do all this stuff. So we got a plan to solve this. And I think that sometimes we forget that as parents. We're like, oh, well, yeah, that helped me repent and to fix myself, but my kid's going to be perfect. And we put this weird stress on ourselves. And I love how you just disband that. Just like, oh, actually, no.
It just takes the pressure off of moms, dads, and kids, right? To be like this perfect thing and you flow. And then, like you said, it's the invitation thing. You bond over things that irritate you. That Casey and I, my son, those are our memories of the things that irritated me most. My goal became deal with my own trigger and then bond over that. Yeah. And those are the things that kind of stick. Like even in your marriage, the things that are hardest when you work through it, now you're like super tight with those. So I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate parents. This is so hard. I always tell dads, like, your job is easy. Dealing with an emotional kid, that'll be the hardest thing you ever do. So it really is.
Yeah.
That's right. So Kirk, what is the best way for people that are listening to this to come and find out more and learn more from all your amazing wisdom?
So we've got easiest way. We have a podcast called the Calm Parenting Podcast.
Mm-hmm.
The organization is Celebrate Calm, which is a horrible name. It sounds like a yoga place or something. It's a terrible name. But if you look up the Calm Parenting Podcast or my name, you'll find, and the podcast is a really good place to start because we have 350 episodes on stuff for little kids, for teens, different topics. And on there, on a website, anybody can reach out to us. And if you heard us through here, tell us you met us through the Happy Family podcast, right? The Club podcast, because then it makes it a little bit more personal.
Yeah.
Well, we exist to help people. It's what we do. So we're happy to answer questions.
That's awesome.
That's great.
I'm going to send you an email tonight. We're good.
Yes. Listen to Marjorie.
I like your wisdom. So, well, Kirk, thank you again. This has been fun. It's been so enlightening and so rewarding. We just really appreciate it. And maybe sometime we can convince you to come on for another episode and share a few more of your wisdom, because it's just been great. We really appreciate your time. So
only if you have at least one of your kids run in the background.
We can arrange like 13 or 14. We got
make it imperfect, like regular family life. Like, let's have a kid come in and start yelling at you.
Yeah.
Live on camera. That would be awesome.
Awesome. I like that. I love it. So great.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Have a great day.
Bye.